All right, welcome folks to the BrightID Weekly Community AMA. Today is January 20th, 2022. We don't have a specific topic for today, but welcome anyone to ask about anything they want or bring up whatever they want related to the BrightID project or any of the integrations that are going on. Yeah, so I was just telling folks at the beginning of this call, my news today is I just got a DApp node. And I'm working for the first time to set up some nodes and help the world of decentralization. I will certainly be doing BrightID and ID chain on that node to the extent that I can figure it out in my fairly non-technical way. Already started up syncing my first ever Bitcoin node, so pleased to be part of that. Also planning to try validating the Gnosis chain, which I and a lot of other people in the ecosystem are really excited about. So yeah, that's my news. Last week, we had a great discussion of the B2 verification. I hope many of you are working on getting your B2 scores up. Adam Stollard continues to be the leader, but I look forward to someone taking him down at some point. Other things I will note in BrightDAO, there was a vote passed to extend GBright rewards, voting rewards. So those should be up and running again. They were down for a few hours, but they're back up and running. Shouldn't require any specific action from anybody. Yeah. Anyone have any questions before I just continue talking on? All right, don't hear any questions yet. There's also there's a forum post up. I don't know if we've gotten to proposal stage yet about modifying the BrightDAO conviction voting parameters. We worked with folks from Token Engineering Commons to do that. So hopefully we can improve the metrics. Specifically, one of the things we were worried about is the possibility of a bad actor coming in and sort of forcing a proposal through too quickly before the rest of the community can notice. So hopefully these change to parameters will improve that. It'll take a little longer to pass things, but we don't expect, I think, a problem passing things. Just give us a little bit more room for someone to notice if there was a problem. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say in our modeling, so they have this really nice web UI where you can model the different parameters. And in our modeling, we saw that some votes could pass fairly quickly, like in a matter of hours. And we thought, well, that doesn't give the community enough time to dispute something that doesn't follow the proposal guidelines. So with the new parameters, there shouldn't be anything there shouldn't be any possibility of passing anything. What did we figure out? There was something like it would take at least a day to pass a proposal, even if it had a lot of support. Is that somewhere around there? But that was the main thing, is these really fast proposals. We didn't want anything like basically under a day. That seemed too fast.
Right. Yeah. So far, all of the proposals have been appropriate, and the community has supported them. But some of them have been just passed crazy fast. You know, proposals that pass in 4 hours. So if people were sleeping, you could not even notice it. So we wanted that to not happen. I think if it has massive overwhelming support, it can still pass pretty quickly, but not to the extent that it is now. So that should be an improvement. Yeah, so glad to see lots of people here. Don't recognize most of the names, but welcome to all of you. Said, if anyone has questions, please ask them.
To continue the meeting, I would like to ask a question, Philip. What are the priorities of BrightID, and what tasks are we going to focus on and are we going to do?
Yeah, I can probably answer that. So I think so we completed a lot of our roadmap that was actually slated for last year, but the BrightDAO kind of pushed it back, but we completed almost all of that. The one thing that we didn't complete was the being able to back up your BrightID to another device. That's something that we've had requests for a long time. We think it's important, it's convenient. You should still do social recovery. Why? Because if someone attacks and takes over your account, maybe through one of your devices or something like that, you need a way to override that. So you still need social recovery. You don't want to lose your BrightID permanently to an attacker, but there needs to be more convenient ways to, let's say, upgrade. You should just be able to get a new phone, transfer your BrightID to that new phone and just get going. You shouldn't have to use social recovery for that. You should also be able to have a quick and easy backup that if you lose your phone or it gets wiped or something like that, you accidentally uninstall it, you should be able to use your backup on another device like your computer to be able to get your BrightID back. So that's really close to being launched. And then we have some new things which I think are really interesting. One is we've noticed that this is something we kind of wanted to do, but never really figured out how to do it. But with the B2 verification, we realized that there's, and also Aura verification coming out, it's going to be really important to find out who you know that's already using BrightID. Because a lot of people will come in and say, well, I don't know anyone that's using BrightID. But I think that you may be surprised and you may find someone if you look through your social circle, but we want to make it easier to find out who you know that's using BrightID. So there's this opt-in registry, and it's done in the most private way that we can, and it's also so it's not going to link your actual BrightID to your other social identifiers, but it provides a way for you to. And it's also not a verification. It's also not something that apps can use for verification. They can't look at this list and say, oh, these are BrightID verified people. They might not be. But what it is it's saying, I'm a BrightID user and I'm adding myself, I'm opting in to add myself to this registry so that my friends can find me. And anyone who does that, they can add one of their social accounts, Twitter, Facebook, phone number, to these registries. Those different bits of data are not linked together. They're kept in separate registries. So all the Facebook accounts are kept in a registry. All the Twitter accounts are kept in a registry. All the phone numbers are kept in a registry. Those aren't linked together. None of those are ever linked to your BrightID. You can add and remove yourself from the registry whenever you want. You don't need to go through the BrightID support or something like that. So it should be a very simple, easy way to use. And then the upshot of that is that if you're a new user and you say, well, it says that I need some already known connections, I don't know who's using BrightID. Maybe you found BrightID some other way, but you can quickly check all your contacts, your phone book, your Twitter contacts, and maybe you'll be surprised and you'll find, oh, I actually do have a few people that are using BrightID. So we thought that might be useful. So that's something we're going to be launching. Also, yeah, work is progressing on Aura, which is another one of these verification methods. The thing I like about Aura is for an average user, it's simpler than B2. So B2, connecting to people that you already know is fine, and it's good, and we should all do that. But it can be a slow process, and it can be kind of you don't know how long it's going to take kind of process. For new users, it could take a while. So the Aura can be a faster way. So with Aura, you just need to find one person that already knows you. Whereas in B2, you need to find, ideally you should find as many as you can, people that already know you, as long as they really know you. In both systems, they really have to know you. You can't take a shortcut by connecting to someone that doesn't actually know you and just saying that they do. That's not going to work. It's not going to help you get verified. In fact, in B2, it actually hurts you to do that. And in Aura, it just won't work. But if you can find just one person that's already using Aura, that can be enough to get you verified. So I'm looking forward to that. Should be an easy, very clear-cut way for people to get a higher level verification, because as we know, the meets verification, it's nice, it's fast, but it's not as resistant to Sybil attacks as B2 and Aura. So it'll be nice to have something that's a stronger resistance. So those are the things I can think of. Can anyone think of anything else that's on our roadmap? There's probably other stuff too, but those are the things that come to mind.
I'll say not.
How?
Go ahead, Yasani.
Go on. No, go on. Go.
I was going to say not really so much on the written roadmap, but the work being done in conjunction with Songade DAO and Mask DAO to get sort of DAO related strategies and voting has been awesome. Folks from both of those teams have really been digging in and building out tools that will be useful to them and hopefully lots of other people once they're up and running. So I'm sorry to see that it takes this much work to get it up and running, but I think once it gets up and running, then it's just available for everyone to use. So excited to see that.
Yeah, it looks like Mohsen Galui had his hand up. Go ahead. If you'd like to speak on the mic, go ahead. Okay, maybe he's not able to talk. But yeah, what you were saying about the DAOs, that's once we have an easy snapshot registry that any DAO can use, I expect that a lot of DAOs to take advantage of that as part of their voting strategy to say, okay, you've got to be BrightID verified before you can vote in snapshot. It will allow, it can combine well with a bunch of other strategies. Let's say quadratic voting. Yeah, anything where you might want to have some form of one person, one vote. So what they're doing in Songa DAO is you have to own an NFT. So you have to have bought one of his songs. And then you, and by the way, he's very prolific. He has 4,600 songs, something like that. So there should be a song, for everyone at this point, but at some point they'll get more scarce. But so you get a song and then you register with BrightID and that just makes sure that there's not a whale scooping up lots of songs and getting lots of votes, because that's not the way they wanted it to be. So that's an interesting strategy, but we don't even know. That's the thing, is we can't even anticipate all the different ways that DAOs will use BrightID, but this should make it really easy to combine it with other voting strategies.
Right. The important part is to make it easy for them, and then they'll come up with stuff that we've never even thought of, and that's awesome. We just need to make it easy for them to iterate and try things.
Right. So one of the things that was a kind of a hurdle in the process was no one had deployed a registry, a cheap and easy registry that was available to multiple DAOs. So we deployed one on ID Chain, and then we realized, okay, for this to work with Snapshot, we need to register ID Chain with Snapshot. So this is kind of highlighting that ID Chain is actually useful, because we looked at other chains. We looked at Gnosis chain, which is a great chain. It's not quite as good as ID Chain for this, because it's really easy to get gas tokens in ID Chain. So it's really easy for someone to come in, not even know, they have to know how to use MetaMask. But that shouldn't be a problem if they're using Snapshot, because you can use MetaMask or some other wallet to sign things, even if you're not paying the gas. Behind the scenes, people get gas tokens, and we found ID Chain was the easiest way for people to get gas tokens behind the scene. If you've ever been to idchain.1/begin, you've seen that it's really easy. You just scan your BrightID, which is something that you're going to need to do to get in this registry anyway, and it gives you gas tokens. So because of that, adding that from the end user's point of view, adding that to the steps that they have to do was the simplest way to get someone onto the BrightID registry of verified users to add themselves. So they get the verifications from the BrightID node, and then after they get the verification from the BrightID node, then they add themselves to the registry and to do that they have to get gas, but it should be a very easy process with ID chain.
Adam, once they get their ED tokens, what action are they actually taking on ID chain?
What they're doing is signing a transaction to add themselves to the registry. So it's a smart contract call. What happens is your BrightID mobile app will will access a BrightID node, get a signed verification. Then there's a smart contract on ID chain that knows how to check those verifications, check the signature, make sure it's really from a BrightID node, make sure you're really verified. Then it adds you to the smart contract registry. And from that point on, any smart contract on ID chain, or in the case of Snapshot, Snapshot can read from a bunch of different chains. That's why we needed to add, as long as they're EVM compatible, that's why we needed to add ID chain to Snapshot. But yeah, any smart contract, anything that can read smart contract events like Snapshot can now read from the registry and see that you are actually a verified user.
And is that linking an ETH address, or is it just related to your actual BrightID itself?
So the BrightIDs are never shared, as we know, because we want to maximize privacy. So in this case, we are using an ETH address. We could change that later on and make it so that it's some other unique token that SongADAO gives out, and or I guess in this case it would be Snapshot, because we're looking at a registry that can be used by multiple DAOs. It could be another unique identifier that's generated somewhere else, but we thought to sort of keep it more decentralized, at the risk of there's always when you allow users to kind of self-serve, there's always the risk that they can mess things up for themselves. Like if we allow people to create their own Ethereum address and use their own Ethereum address, there is the chance that they could lose access to that Ethereum address, of course. But we thought that would be a better way. So we're currently using Ethereum addresses. What we are doing though is we're having the registry expire every month. It's an easy process to relink. So once a month, you rescan your BrightID. And the reason why we're doing that is to allow for things like, well, first of all, people to get unverified if that ever happens, which it does happen rarely. You know, people do die. People, some people turn out to be civil attackers, things like that. So people do get unverified sometimes. But anyways, expiring helps with that, but it also helps with people who lose access to their Ethereum address. So the worst thing that could happen if you lose access to your Ethereum address is you don't get to use the DAO until the next expiration period ends, and then everybody relinks, and now you can use a different Ethereum address if you want.
Fazil, I see your hand is up. Did you have a question?
Hello, how are you, everyone? Sorry to interrupt you, but I have a suggestion for you. If it's possible for you to do a work with unstoppable domain or another services on that situation, it's pretty much better for people like me, because I have many addresses on many blockchains. By the way, it's helpful for us to do the verification with BrightID and have something like that. And also, I don't have anyone near myself, and none of my friends work with the crypto, especially in the crypto, and none of them knows the BrightID. Okay, and I cannot do the registration for if I lose my ID, BrightID, I have no one, and no one I can trust if I lose mine, and they can accept that it's me. Okay, I have no solution. It's 4 months from now. It's 4 months. I did the registration, and I just find just one person to accept me. Okay, and it's a big problem for me. I don't know what shall I do.
Okay, those are two really good questions. I really love your first suggestion about using ENS. And I've been thinking about this. This is something in the back of my mind, and anyone who comes up with a solution, I would love to hear it, but a way to mix the two, because I don't think we can quite yet assume that everyone is using ENS. If we could, then we could just say, okay, to get in this registry, you must use ENS. I don't think we can quite yet assume that. Maybe at some point we can, and there could be a registry of just ENS users for BrightID, and that could be a requirement. You have to register an ENS domain before you use this DAO or something like that. So that's one possibility, but there might be some way to mix them so that you can choose either or. I haven't quite figured out how that might be possible, but if there was a way to say, okay, some people are using Ethereum addresses, some people are using ENS domain names, and we mix them somehow in the registry, that might be possible. But I agree with you. That would be really nice. If you've got several Ethereum addresses, you don't have to, you just use your ENS domain. That way, if somehow you lose access to the one that you chose, you can just use another one, and it's really easy. To answer your second question about, so what do I do for social recovery if I don't know anyone in the crypto space? So I'll tell you who I have for my, so I won't tell you everyone that I have, but I'll tell you some of the people that I have for my social recovery are people that they're very new to crypto. Maybe they're barely using it, and maybe they're only using it because of me. For example, my parents, and other people I've actually gotten into crypto through BrightID, and they're really happy that I did that. But like my sister, so I have my parents, I have my sister, and I have my wife, and so these are those four people. They never used crypto in any shape or form. Two of them still don't really use it except me. They kind of rely on me to do everything for them. Two of them have learned how to use it and have gotten their own wallets and have started using it. So it takes time, but I would say that the approach that I did with some of these people was I just said, I need help. I have this, I need people that I trust to install this app. They don't have to be verified themselves. They just have to install the app. I told them, please keep this app on your phone. I may need it if I need to recover my account. I just need someone I can trust to install this on their phone. And they didn't have any problem doing it. So that might be a solution for you. What do you think about that possibility, Faisal? Okay, I'm seeing a thumbs up. Yeah, so give that a try. I hope the BrightID stars can recommend that to more people and make it clear that the person that you're using as your recovery connection does not have to be BrightID verified. They don't have to use crypto. They may become interested. Like with me, it was about 50-50. About half the people that I brought in that way became more interested because of BrightID. Some of them just never really went very far with it, and that's fine. I can still use them as my recovery connection.
I'll say that both of my young children have BrightIDs. So those are additional folks in my household that are not ready to dig deep into this stuff, but anyone's welcome to BrightID. There's no age requirement. So.
Okay, I see some questions in chat. Does anyone want to answer those questions? Okay, I see one that says, can I register my BrightID? So we used to do a connection party at the end of these, but we don't anymore. But you can find, if you go to meet.brightid.org, you can find when the connection making parties.
Another easy question that someone asks is will there be more apps in 2022? The answer is yes, but that's more up to the apps than it is up to BrightID. BrightID is a utility that anyone's welcome to use. There are a number of groups that are considering it, working on things. And as we mentioned, like the tooling that Songado and MaskDAO are working on, once the hard work of making those function is up and running, we expect other people will come in and use that tooling that has been built out. So I hope to see many more apps and projects using BrightID in the coming year.
Yeah, another one that I've been keeping my eye on. So there's a bunch of them, and actually, not all of them have registered with our app registry yet. So there's some people that are some apps that are kind of in the exploratory phase. I don't know if I should mention what they are until they actually commit to it, because I don't want people to I don't want to give any I don't want to give any information that turns out not to be true, but I will say that some that definitely are integrating that are pretty interesting is there's something called Noble, which is kind of like if any of you ever used Collabland, it's a way of bringing in some Web2 and other social accounts and kind of linking them all together. And so they're adding BrightID to the mix. So for instance, one thing you could do, which Songado tried, they're moving on to Snapshot, but this is something they tried initially and it worked, was they used Noble to make a role in Discord. The only way to get the role is you have to have an NFT and you have to have BrightID. And so that's interesting. Other things you can do things with POAPs. You can do things with like Twitter accounts and other things like that. It can check on-chain stuff. So so that's really interesting. That's interesting for communities, not just DAOs, but other communities, to be able to use BrightID. And let's see, what else? What are some other interesting apps that are coming out? Yeah, a bunch related to DAOs. Yeah, there are some games coming out, some like massively multiplayer crypto games. I don't know enough about them to really talk about them, but they're working on integration. So yeah, we'll definitely see some new apps, probably something for everybody, something everyone can get interested in. So yeah, definitely be looking out for that. We will always announce and promote any new apps that get into our registry. Okay, so I think Bukaj asked a question. Okay, can the user, since the recovery connection is graph-based, can't the user pick some nodes over at the Explorer and save them as a seed phrase in order to recover the account? Just click or search the node. Yeah, so we could do something like that, but I really think that the average user is going to be, they know how to make a connection. So it's a pretty easy process to go back to that connection on the BrightID app, select it, and bump up the level of that connection from already known to recovery. And as long as the other person has selected already known, you can't just select, you shouldn't, and we kind of have this barrier that won't let you select someone as a recovery connection unless they have at least selected you as already known. So it's pretty easy through the interface. So we're just going to keep doing it that way. And then like we talked about earlier in this call, the other recovery method that we want to add is recovering to other devices. So you could, rather than picking like one person to back up your BrightID, you pick a device, another device that you control to back up your BrightID. And then, of course, the social recovery network is kind of like this multi-signature thing where you need several people to, right now, it defaults to, and I don't think you can change this default, it's 2 of whatever. So you need 2 people to help you recover your BrightID. So if you have 10 people you can trust that are not going to steal your BrightID from you, then you can set up 10. If you're having a hard time but you can only get 3, then that's good enough. You can do 2 of 3. I think we have the minimum set at 3. because we thought that everybody should probably be able to find 3 people. It may take a little work, but you should be able to find 3 people that you can use. Okay, I see what Bukaj is asking. He's saying basically use some sort of knowledge-based like recovery thing. And he's suggesting, well, it could be like a seed phrase. That's probably the simplest thing that people are aware of. So you could have a seed phrase, write it down, and use it to restore your BrightID. I don't really like that method. We may implement it at some point, but we didn't go for that one right away. That's as far as recovering accounts like this. I don't like that sort of. It's too error prone. There's too many ways it could fail. So we did social recovery first because if you do set it up correctly, it's hard for that to fail. Yeah, I think it's a really good method since you're already making connections with people. It works really well with BrightID. But we do want, I think the other devices thing is going to work because that's also a really common thing that people do is people are changing devices, upgrading devices. People have multiple devices. Why not leverage that? And that's a real easy way to back things up. And then social recovery overrides that, like we were saying before. So if someone gets access to one of your devices and maybe locks out some of your other devices or something, you lose access, something's stolen, you can override all of that through your social recovery.
I'll use this as a bridge to some questions that Amir asked, and that is sort of number one, while the B main development team has not built that tool yet, someone else could. BrightID is an open source public good. It's not owned by anyone. The folks that sort of spend the most time working on it are folks from BMain and BrightDAO now. But anybody could offer to make it better, and folks, someone could build how that works, and the community could choose to implement it. Would be my guess. I say that from a non-technical standpoint,
true.
But so Amir asked, given that BrightID is not run by a particular organization, does the concept of a DAO make sense to it? DAOs make sense in lots of ways. Like I said, the 2 main communities, and there's certainly overlap between them, that support BrightID today is the BMain DAO, which has existed since the very beginning of 2019, and 2018 maybe, and BrightDAO. Most of the technical work is done on the BMain side. And there are people that work full or part-time on those efforts. We certainly hope, though, that folks in other communities, and BrightDAO being one of them, start taking on more of those things. Both these organizations largely exist to improve and build BrightID. Next, yes, if BrightID has a plan to raise capital, I would say probably not on the BrightID foundational level. If a lot of people get on BrightID, BMain will earn revenue because every user has to be sponsored. Sponsoring user costs about 15 cents nowadays, and will trend towards $1 over time, which, if there was large scale adoption, would be seemingly plenty of money to fund BMain at that sort of foundational level. BrightDAO would be awesome if it figures out a plan it can raise money however it wants. BrightDAO is up to the community. If you folks are in BrightID, come be part of BrightDAO. Everyone's welcome to be part of it. And then his last part of the question is, why haven't applications seriously used BrightID for airdrops? Hasn't happened yet. We absolutely think it'll come. We did the fair drop to to give Bright tokens to thousands of people. It was a good learning experience. We had pretty good uptake. In the vast majority of the tokens were claimed by the vast majority of individual users eligible. We also learned a lot. So if we were helping someone to do the next version of a Fairdrop using BrightID, I think it would work even better. So if you know projects that want to ensure that it gets out to real people, send them this way.
Yeah, I think there are projects that do want one, whatever they're giving per person, like they do want to limit the amount per person that they give out in their airdrops. And so I think, or I think BrightID is a good vehicle for that. I also think that we have been used in faucets before, which bear a lot of similarities to airdrops. And we actually have been used in airdrops that I haven't kept too close of track of, because it was done through Discord. So we have this Discord unique bot that is in hundreds of communities, hundreds of Discord servers, and I don't know what they all are, but a lot of them look like they're crypto based, and so there could easily be airdrops happening. I know of at least one that actually did happen that way, using BrightID Discord bot and Collabland to distribute the tokens. So yeah, it's already possible, and it already happens, and it has happened at least a few times. And why doesn't it happen more? It might be more of a, so some of it is evaluating the economics, because there's kind of two ways you can do it. You can, if you want to limit the voting power to like limit the voting power of whales, there's a couple ways you can do it. One way is you can, with the token distribution, you can say, okay, we're just going to limit the amount you can get. And NFTs can do this as well with their NFT minting. You could limit the number of NFTs one person could mint using BrightID. So that's one way. The other way is you just let people mint as much as they want or buy as much as they want of the token. And then after that, you can, when it comes to the voting, you can do something like what SongADAO is doing, where they limit one vote per person, no matter how many NFTs you have. So you could do the same thing with tokens. You could say, okay, we're doing the voting by token weighting, but there's a maximum. It won't count anything above 1,000. So you could say, you can buy as many tokens as you want, but you can only ever vote with 1,000 of them. And then you could do something like, you could also do something like quadratic voting. So there's a lot of possibilities. And so I think DAOs are still kind of figuring out what they want to do. Not too many have done the airdrop style, where it's like limiting on the actual airdrop to one person per like one person per reward, or however they do it. But it could definitely be done that way. So there was, I mean, there have been people that have reached out to us, but about doing that, but I don't think any of them have followed through with it yet. So anyways, it has happened on a small scale, and I think it will happen more, and we'll see more experimentation with that sort of thing.
And also as more people get on BrightID, so there's 50,000 people on BrightID now. If someone was trying to do an airdrop, most of the people they want to airdrop you don't have BrightID yet, and it's always tricky to get people the first time. Once someone has BrightID, it's really easy to reuse it for the next application. But a lot of projects, they don't want to be first.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So with our own airdrop, we did a lot of the rewards per BrightID verified user. So we did that. We airdropped, and most of the rewards were limited to one BrightID account. And we found some interesting things. Some of them, obviously the apps that we had already integrated with, like Gitcoin users, Rabbit Hole users, there was no problem there. But some of them, like we tried to use POAPs. We tried to reward BrightID users, or not BrightID users. We tried to reward community members of other communities that had POAPs, and we told them, okay, to get this reward, you have to link your BrightID, and it was really low, like a really low conversion rate. Like most people just didn't do it.
And to clarify, so it was specific POAPs for specific communities. So like people that went to particular early Ethereum developer conference that like had that POAP set, and we had no reason to think that those people were already on BrightID.
Exactly, they weren't already on BrightID,
and very few of them joined BrightID to collect that reward.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think most of that is not because I think it's too hard to get BrightID verified. I think most of that was because just marketing on our part. Like we didn't know how to market to these people, how to reach them. We didn't know how to contact them. We didn't know how to get the word out well enough to these communities, get them interested enough in joining our fair drop. We also had a similar situation with Gitcoin projects. So we're going to publish a retrospective on the fair drop pretty soon, and like most of the fair drop that didn't get collected, I think, okay, so out of all the rewards that we created, about 90% of them got collected, and then of that remaining 10%, 9%, so almost all of it, 90% of the 10%, so 9% was Gitcoin projects that didn't collect. So anyone who had a Gitcoin project, so not Gitcoin users, but Gitcoin projects. And the reason is because, well, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard for someone to, well, we didn't require that they link their BrightID, but it's hard for them to learn. It's hard for us to reach them. It's hard for them to maybe coordinate to go and collect the reward because maybe they're using a DAO or some other multi-sig or something like that. So there was a whole lot of Bright that was just left behind because we couldn't get in touch with those people. So that's part of every airdrop. But also with the hurdle, I mean, some fair drops may be, they may worry about that, or some airdrops may worry about that. They may say, well, if we require everyone to link BrightID, maybe we won't have the reach that we would. And then there's some that are the opposite of that, where they say, okay, well, we think BrightID is a really cool community. They've got 50,000 people in there, and a lot of them know about crypto. We want them to be part of our airdrop, and we don't mind making everybody else become BrightID verified to collect the airdrop. So you could kind of go either way with that. And I think Philip's right. The more people that are already on BrightID, the more likely that it is that future airdrops will say, yeah, this is going to go out to BrightID verified users.
And one of the things we've always said about BrightID is it only takes one. It takes one thing that becomes really popular on sort of its own merits that requires BrightID, and then BrightID scales with it, and then now lots of people are on BrightID, and the next thing is really easy. So imagine that some token that did become very valuable did offer an allocation to BrightID users or required BrightID to get it. Right? Imagine the Uniswap airdrop where thousands of dollars requires BrightID. People would be kicking down the doors to get their BrightIDs. We'd struggle keeping up with all the people, but then all those people are there. And now instead of 50,000 users, there's 1 million users on BrightID. Way more attractive for the next project to just follow in the footsteps.
Okay, I think we're probably nearing the end. Do we have any final questions?
Before call, because I see many Iranians here, I would like to say something in Persian, if I have permission.
Yeah, please do.
اول که سلام میکنم خدمت همه دوستای عزیزم. دوم اینکه خیلی در مورد وریفای شدن حالا سوال داشتن پرسن. الان توی دیسکورد هم من دیدم هر شب ساعت 9 شب، معمولا هر شب، حالا بعضی شبا برگزار نمیشه ولی معمولا هر شب ساعت 9 شب کانکشن پارتی فارسی داریم برای وریفای شدن. اینجا نمیشه وریفای شد و اینجا جلسه هفتگی AMA هست و ربطی به وریفای شدن نداره. و اینکه اگر سوالی هم هست توی دیسکورد که من آیدی من رو میتونید ببینید تو چنل پشتیبانی فارسی. و الان هم حالا الان تقریبا به آخر جلسه نزدیک میشیم ولی اگه کسی سوالی داره که نمیتونه به انگلیسی بپرسه و خیلی کوتاه هم هست میتونه الان بگه که من ترجمه کنم برای دوستان و جواب بگیرم. مرسی. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you. Yeah. So I understand BrightID and how the verification is working, but is it possible to make these connection parties easier? I believe a lot of people just skip because of the verification process. Can you integrate this verification process into BrightID itself, not Zoom? When we started the BrightID verification idea, the idea is to connect to people that you already know that bring you into BrightID. The people that tell you about BrightID, those are the people you should connect to. What we found was that a bunch of people were independently finding BrightID, and that's how you can have people that don't know anyone. So we, because BrightID is kind of a new concept, we really need brand new users to have some sort of introduction. And so the BrightID stars do a really good job at these meets of explaining what BrightID is, how you should use it, educating people on things like telling them to never sell their BrightID, explaining how to set up social recovery. So we kind of need that introduction. If someone else didn't bring you into BrightID, then we need that sort of introduction. So I think we do want to stick with having these meet calls for now. I think in the future, when it becomes more likely that everybody knows at least one person that's using BrightID, then maybe we can have more of a self-service type of learning about BrightID. And our educational materials are getting better all the time. We have a Git book. You can always ask questions in Discord. And so yeah, we'll eventually, because the connection party thing doesn't scale to world scale, it's just not possible. So eventually we're gonna have to move away from it. And BrightID will be something that you get verified on your own, but it's always gonna be a little bit of, I shouldn't say always, because you reach a point where it's something that your friend will introduce to you. Your friend will say, hey, you're not on BrightID yet, you should be on BrightID, and I'll make sure you get verified. Not too much work on your part. That's how it eventually will become. And so it'll be, I mean, I can imagine a future where kids are growing up with BrightID. It's just like, you don't even think about it. It just, when you reach a certain age, your parents create an account for you, get you verified, and like, you never think about it. It's just like, it's not some effort that you have to do. It's just something that everyone does, and you don't think about it. So eventually we'll get to that point. But in between, yeah, there can be some right now we're doing the connection parties, and in the future there'll be other ways to find people that you can connect to. But there's in the intermediate term, there's always going to be something like that.
And also in the time of COVID, we've not focused on in-person onboarding, but prior to COVID, that was the plan. Adam and I went to a crypto conference, and we connected to hundreds of people. It was great. It was really easy, and it was even fun. People enjoyed the act of doing it. And a lot of us have just been holed up in our houses. But when people get back to being out and about and interacting with others in person, I think we'll see a rise. There will be no requirement that anybody go to a meet. That's not how BrightID is supposed to work. Yeah.
So you could imagine that it might be, just something you do when you meet your friends face to face, or there will be many transition periods for BrightID. So you can imagine what it eventually ends up as, but there's going to be several transition periods that involve, right now it's online meets, you know, in the future it could be you go to, I don't know, you do it with your friends face to face. Maybe that becomes the more usual way to do it. But all of these ways actually mostly already work. Like if you already know someone in BrightID, you don't have to go to a meet. If you know someone that has seed status, but in the future, I mean, we already have B2 verification, so apps can choose like either or. They could say, well, yeah, either you know some people in BrightID or you go to a meet, and there's going to be, let's see, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was going to answer this question here. So Bukaj was saying, well, like, is there another way to do it besides QR codes? And actually there is. So if you click the copy link under the QR code, you can send, it's like a link that someone can click on. You can send it to someone any way you want. You could send it over chat, you could send it over SMS, and then that person just clicks on it and it opens up BrightID and makes the connection with you.
And in fact, we use those every day during connection parties.
Yep.
For people that are actually on their smartphone while on Zoom. We end up using that exact method because they can't scan a QR code while they're participating in the Zoom call on that device.
So you still need a smartphone to use BrightID at this point, although there is, we are starting the foundations of a web-based BrightID that you could use on some other device. And people have talked about, well, can we have a card, like I don't know, a card with a chip or something like that that people could carry around that could have their BrightID on it. So that could definitely be part of the future. There's lots of possibilities for how you could make BrightID connections, and we don't want to, kind of the future that I see for the BrightID mobile app that you install on your smartphone is it's a way to manage where your BrightID is, which devices it's on, which apps you've authorized, and but it doesn't have to. It shouldn't be the only way you can make connections. You could potentially make connections through a card that you carry around. You could potentially, yeah, there's like a bunch of different ways it could happen. Okay, well, I think we've probably reached the end of the questions. Yeah, it is a long topic. That's true. But like it goes back to kind of the dream that Philip and I had, and the reason why we wanted BrightID to exist is we were imagining if there was a resource to be distributed, it should reach to everybody. And so for that to work, we need to come up with more than just installing an app on a smartphone. There's got to be other ways to reach literally everybody. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do. So if that's something that's exciting to you and you have ideas in that area, you should definitely join our DAO and help us figure out how to get to the next 10 million people and beyond.
All right, well, there's some great questions today, folks. Thank you all for coming and giving your time and ideas. If any of this has inspired any of you to want to get in deeper, please come join us. We don't have all the answers, but we believe we're headed somewhere important, and we just want to get it right. All right. Well, have a great week. We're always on Discord, and we will be back here again in a week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.